Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice, brought to you by Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, Dokes Book Fields, and the Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. It's St. Paddy's Day. That's right. Kind of feels weird with not a lot of patios open, but nonetheless, we'll all get to feel a little bit Irish later on. First, enjoy this episode because I got my good friend Anthony Jacob from NHL Discussion on with me. It's our NHL Trade Deadline annual review. The last show we do here on the ice before the Monday deadline next week. We're going to talk about some trades that have been made, some potential trades that are on the go perhaps, as well as sellers, pretenders, contenders, buyers. Do our teams even make the playoffs? Will they get past the first round, those Leafs? That much and more here on the ice with my friend Anthony Jacob from nhl.discussion. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Joining me right now, Anthony Jacob from NHL.discussion. Anthony, I don't know, it's got to be the second most wonderful time of the year. Not talking school, but we didn't get to see the first part of it because that happened for 4 days and then it got canceled. But thankfully it's going to show up in August again. We'll get your thoughts on that. But Monday, big day happening on Monday. Give us what you think's going on, what's been happening over the last couple of days and some of the latest trades we've seen so far.
Well, obviously, it all started off with the Tyler Toffoli trade, and I kind of thought that would be the first domino to fall, and then we'd see a bunch of trades after that. But it's been pretty quiet since, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because I like a really chaotic final day on deadline day where there's lots of moves. So hopefully lots of those moves that we've been waiting for happen on the actual deadline day. And there's been a lot of big names that have been out there in the trade rumors. And then guys like Thomas Hertl, John Klingberg, who Hertl today signed an extension. Klingberg is probably not going to be traded after Miro Heiskanen got diagnosed with mono. So there's been a lot of excitement about potential big name guys potentially getting moved. And then lots of them getting pulled off the trade blocks as well. So I think that because some of these guys are getting pulled off the trade board, we might see some guys we weren't expecting to be traded to get traded at the last minute as some of these playoff teams are kind of desperate to try and find some additions to their roster.
Toffoli moving 2 or 3 weeks ago, Tyson Jost moving for cap space potential. Vetrano from Florida getting moved up to New York. That's one of the other later ones that happened in the last day or so. All because of cap space, all because of the opportunity for a player to make a team that much better. When you think about it, I got to ask you this question. We look at last year's run to the Cup. It always looked a little different. Montreal made it to the final. How come Montreal is such a terrible team when the win-loss columns this year? Did Price and Weber really keep it that much together, or is it just the fact that they had a really great successful run and that was their push?
Well, I feel like the way that Marc Bergevin built that team and what he's talked about is that they were built for the playoffs. And I really think that's true because if you look at where they were in the NHL's overall standings, I think they were at 16th in terms of points. And you could definitely say if they weren't in the Canadian division, that the Habs probably weren't going to make the playoffs. And they rode their hot goaltender. They rode a team that had really good team defense and systems. And you take away, your two veterans, you can argue how much Shea Weber was really impacting the Canadians at that age. But definitely someone like Philip Deneau, their excellent two-way center who ended up leaving for the LA Kings. I mean, you take away probably their best veteran at all three positions. And considering this team was already on the fringes of making the playoffs beforehand, I really wasn't surprised that the Canadians are outside the playoffs this year. I'm shocked just how bad they are. I mean, their record's 16, 36, and 8, which is just dreadful. But in terms of them not making the playoffs, I wasn't too surprised because the entire playoff run, it just seemed like it was too good to be true.
Do they have more selling to do before Monday?
There's definitely Ben Sherratt, which is kind of the big one. We're both familiar with Ben Sherratt from his days in Winnipeg. I'm not exactly sure where your opinion lands on him. I know on Twitter there's all sorts of varying opinions on exactly how effective he is, but the fact of the matter is, no matter what your opinion on Ben Sherratt is, it's that playoff teams are clearly valuing him and that he has played big minutes. He played a key role with Shea Weber in last year's playoff run. He played some key minutes with guys like Dustin Byfuglien in Winnipeg, to varying degrees of success. And it seems like a contending team is probably going to be willing to give up a first-round pick for Ben Sherratt. And the reason he hasn't been moved,
for him as a first-round pick.
That's the price that the Canadians are saying, and that's why he hasn't been traded yet, is because teams like, I've heard St. Louis, among a whole bunch of others, they like Ben Sherratt, but they don't like the first-round pick. I don't like the first-round pick. I think there's a lot better defensemen that you can try and trade for at the deadline than Ben Sherratt, but I think he's definitely going to get moved. And it's, at the end of the day, I think if a team doesn't have a defenseman and Montreal's holding out for a first-round pick, some general managers most likely going to make that trade. There's definitely some other guys Montreal could move. I've heard Arturi Lehkonen, who was kind of in and out of the lineup in their playoff run. The Habs are also looking for a first-round pick for him, which I think is a bit steep. And then also Brett Kulak, another one of their depth defensemen. I believe they want like a third-round pick for him. So if you're weighing your options, would you rather have Sherratt for a first-round pick or Kulak for a third-round pick? I'm probably going to pick Kulak instead.
I'm not going to take either one of those because I'm going to look at Jeff Petrie simply because he is a guy that's had a tremendous offensive year last year, kind of not so great this year. But again, you look at both what Sherratt and Petrie have done in the last couple of years, their campaign has shown that they've got great games under them. They've been fairly healthy for the most part. I know Petrie had a bit of a run last year, but the thing is, when you go into that second or third round, you're looking for a fifth and sixth defenseman that's going to stabilize that defensive core. Your Leafs, I've been hearing, not on the Twitter board, but I mean, potentially looking for some more defensive help, but they got some bigger issues between the pipes. Do you think the Leafs can buy something with the current cap restrictions they have?
I think the big question comes down to Jake Muzzin, who's currently on their long-term injured reserve. And if you remember last year with Nikita Kucherov, what they did to wait until the playoffs until they activated him, and then they didn't have to worry about the salary cap space. And it seems like the Vegas Golden Knights are doing a similar thing with Mark Stone. Obviously, Vegas is in all sorts of trouble because as much as I like that team, they're right on the fringes of a playoff spot. So, but the Leafs could do a similar thing with Muzzin. And if they could keep him out till playoffs, they have $5.5 million to work with to try and acquire someone. Mrazek has been awful in net for them. Campbell started off the season incredible. Now he's been really, really bad. I mean, the Leafs have let in 4+ goals in 6+ games. Obviously, I don't know if you saw last night, their rookie goaltender, Eric Kallgren, had a shutout in his first game. And so as much as that's some exciting news for them, he's not the answer. And for me, I think they have to ride Jack Campbell. I don't see a goaltender out there on the market. Marc-Andre Fleury, perhaps. The one guy that I am intrigued about from a Leafs perspective would be Semyon Varlamov from the New York Islanders. The Islanders are a team who everyone is expecting to make the playoffs. They're still quite far out. Would Lou Lamoriello be willing to trade Varlamov to the Leafs for, say, a first-round pick and taking Mrazek's contract back? That's a potential option for me. I think the Islanders would potentially be able to do that because they have Ilya Sorokin, the young netminder who's kind of a tandem with Varlamov. So for me, as much as the Fleury thing makes a lot of sense, I don't really see it happening with the Leafs. And if they're not going to put all their trust into Campbell, I think they should really push for Varlamov.
Who else is selling and who else do you think is buying by Monday? Give me your top 3 in each category.
Well, I think the Eastern Conference is pretty set in stone. I mean, we have the 8 playoff teams in the Atlantic. It's Tampa Bay, Toronto, Florida, Boston. I think all those teams are going to be buying to varying degrees. Tampa Bay wants to add some depth. Florida definitely wants to add a big piece. We talked about the Vetrano trade. That's shedding cap space for, I believe Florida and Colorado are both going to go hard after Claude Giroux. I believe that Florida is also going to go hard after Hampus Lindholm. Toronto is going to go hard after whoever they can. And that's just the Atlantic Division. If you go into the Metro, same thing there. I mean, the Penguins are a little bit more hesitant in terms of what they want to do. With Brian Burke behind the helms, he's being a little bit conservative in his approach. I mean, the Penguins have been a team that's given up first-round picks left, right, and center the last decade, but it seems like now with Brian Burke there, they're trying to play it a little bit more conservative. So we'll see what happens there, but obviously the Rangers, Hurricanes, and Capitals are all going to be buyers as well. And in the Western Conference, it's a little bit more up in the air. I mean, there's obviously the top teams of Colorado and Calgary who are all in. I believe that St. Louis and Nashville are also going to be buyers. But then after that, we have such a log jam of teams who are fighting for a playoff spot. I think we'll get into, obviously, the Jets and the Canucks and the other playoff teams like the Oilers as well into what they're doing. And then also teams like Vegas, who they seem like they should be buyers, but at the same time, these type of teams don't want to be giving up a first round pick plus to, at the end of the day, maybe they miss the playoffs. So definitely the Western Conference is the one to watch in the next, 5 days now, because it's just so uncertain which teams are willing to go all in and which teams are kind of looking to build towards next year.
So as far as we're concerned, I mean, I don't understand how Pittsburgh plays so well. And, they had Malkin missing for a good chunk of the first half of the year, and they're still in the position that they're in. I think they're the dark horse coming out of that Eastern Conference. As for the West, because, we've got lots, we're in Western Canada. We are the Western team. I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure on those 6, 7, 8 teams to make a move, but also come playoff time, they're going to be just as strong as those 1, 2, 3 teams. And it's going to be one of those interesting things to see come Monday, because I don't know if I want to put a plus minus. Maybe I'll ask you at the end of the show, Anthony, what type of plus minus we're going to see on how many trades on Monday. But I know I'd like to see a busy one too. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to get to talk about the reason as to why potential trades may not happen. And it might not just be a money issue. Stay with us here on the ice. Back here with Anthony Jacob from nhl.discussion. Anthony, we finally got out of this whole 2-year fix of COVID-19 protocols. There's some still sticking around, but basically it's all systems go for the last part of this playoff run and into playoffs. But the big question is it salary cap that's causing all this hesitation for trades being triggered? Or is it the fact that we're starting to see more players have an influence, not just no trade clauses, but saying, hey, I don't want to go north of the border, or I'd rather stay south of the border, and I'd rather just do my thing and, enjoy the last bit of my career with a team that may not make it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's holding things up is cap space. I mean, almost all the teams at the top of the standings are within $1 million of the salary cap, and it's making them make creative moves like the Kucherov loophole and stuff like that. And it seems like almost no matter what the trade is, it always ends up that they're, making a trade where a team's retaining 50% of a player's salary. I mean, we saw the Josh Manson trade to Colorado. I didn't even have to look twice to see that the Anaheim Ducks retained 50% of Manson's salary. It was just kind of, I was expecting that because it's the only way that trades work these days. And I think the salary cap in general just makes trade deadline a little bit less exciting because the top teams have so little movement they can do. And I think also we're looking at some of the teams who've had success in the past and won the Stanley Cup. They're not necessarily making the first round pick top prospect getting traded away in exchange for big name players. Sometimes it's just, one or two complementary pieces that are added to a team that can make the difference and drive a team to a Stanley Cup. So I think that teams are thinking maybe you don't have to make the big move, and then also they're looking at the situation and saying we're not able to make the big move.
Kucherov clause has helped out the Tampa Bay Lightning, not last year, but also the year before. So they've back-to-back Stanley Cup winners. But why is it the NHL is so concerned, you think, about a luxury tax going over the salary cap? You look at the other big three sports in North America, teams like the Yankees, teams like the Lakers, and the big draws don't really care about salary cap, or it seems like they don't really care about salary cap. They just go out and spend money because they know they're going to be vying for a championship year in and year out. Why aren't we seeing other teams do that? I mean, Edmonton is a goaltender away from being a Stanley Cup contender. Colorado is one centerman away from being that, that Western Conference leader in going into the Stanley Cup Finals. And why keep Mark Stone on the bench when you know that he could be helping your team vying for a playoff spot? Are owners that concerned about going over that luxury tax that much?
Yeah, that's what I'm not certain about, because I don't know about you, but for me, it would be so much more entertaining if the Oilers could just go out and spend that money. Or if the Maple Leafs could go and get a big name defenseman to try and finally get out of the first round, but instead everyone's pretty much stuck in the same position and have so little movement that they can make. So yeah, for me, if there was such thing as a luxury tax in the NHL, it would make things a ton more exciting. I mean, if you just look at, say, the MLB, I mean, right after the lockout ended, there's been trades and signings, and the Blue Jays have signed this guy and traded for this Gold Glove winner and stuff like that. And for me, it would just make the whole league a lot more entertaining if we were able to have that movement. And I believe that if there was some sort of luxury tax involved, that would be the way to do it.
Is there a penalty for going over the salary cap? Like, do you lose draft picks? Do you not get a Stanley Cup ring? Like, how does that work? I don't even know.
Well, you can't. Like, you can't put a roster together that's over the cap. There is like bonus stuff. So say a player has a bonus of $1 million. If it's over the salary cap for the team, it'll transition into the next year. So let's say, for example, Andrew Kopp had $1 million bonus, and because of that, the Jets went over their $80 million cap space by $1 million. Well, then next year, their cap space would be $79 million. So, okay. but just in terms, like, you can't make a move if it's going to put you over the cap. So like the Jets literally could not sign a free agent for $2 million if they only have $1 million of cap space. The league would simply deny it.
So that's it. The league has veto power, basically saying, "Oh, you're going to be 80.1 million. You're going to be 0.1 over. You can't make that happen."
Yeah, exactly.
Some salary has to be retained. So let's talk about this board issue, because I think that is also a proponent here for a lot of players. Because a player like Marc-Andre Fleury, Canadian-born, never missed the playoffs in his entire career, which is astounding. Playing for the Chicago Blackhawks, that, let's be honest, probably won't make the playoffs for his first time ever. But as a team, they're not doing so well. Why wouldn't he want to go to Edmonton for one last hoorah? Or maybe go back to Toronto and give them a cup chance, because Lord knows the Maple Leafs need one, because they haven't seen any type of silver since '67.
Yeah.
Sorry to bring that up, by the way.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a border situation. I think the NHL is different than other leagues. I think MLB and NBA is a bit more of a thing, because I think they have a couple more unvaccinated players, and so then they actually can't cross the border and play in Canada. But in terms of for NHL players, I'm not sure how much the border is still making a difference. I think that there's always reasons why players don't want to go to Canada, but there's also reasons why lots of them do. And like you said, with Fleury, who's Canadian born, I think there's reasons for him to come back to Canada as well. And with such a large base of the NHL being Canadian born, I think it creates a lot more players wanting to come back and play in Canada.
So let's move back into one more topic here. We've kind of touched on it a bit. Your Leafs look like they're making the playoffs. My Jets probably are on that cusp where they're going to fit 7 or 8 if they're lucky. Do your Leafs make it past the first round in the playoffs? Or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell. I know lots of people have completely written them off already, which I understand because losing the last 5 years in the first round doesn't provide much confidence, and especially considering how the last month has gone. But at the end of the day, they're still, I believe, 8th in overall league standings. And at the end of the day, if you're one of the top 8 teams, it's pretty much a coin flip for if you win the first round series. Sure, maybe you can have advantage here or there, but you're one injury away from either a win or a loss, a hot goalie away from a win or a loss. And for me, the Leafs have a good enough team to win a series. It's just whether it ends up happening. And I guess in the next month or two, we'll get a better sense of if they can actually do it.
Basically, they're missing a really good defenseman if Muzzin comes back, and they need someone in the pipes to start getting hot. I mean, they need a Binnington-esque kind of performance from Campbell or this Zamboni driver that showed up last night, the other day with his first shutout in his first NHL game. I didn't even hear this guy. I thought he was playing with the Marlies for all I knew. I mean, I was like, wow, where'd this guy come from? But hey, good for him. Our Jets on the border. I mean, they're sitting 6 points out of the last playoff space. They've been playing decent hockey, but they can't get a ring of wins together. They always have that one loss that intercepts or interrupts a winning streak here. And they just can't. They always give the excuse, we just got to come back. We got to arrest that one. We can't think of that one. We got to come back stronger. They play St. Louis and they defeat them well. They play Vegas and they beat them up even though a bit battered and bruised up. They play against the really good teams really well outside of Colorado. And yet they still lose to teams like the Islanders. And they have hard-fought wins and a lot of extra effort being against the Devils. And what is it that the Jets – what are the Jets' future going to be if there aren't sellers? What are their plans going to be after Monday? Are they going to really make a push?
Yeah, Jets are such an interesting case because going into the year, I think they addressed their biggest issue in defense and getting Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. I think they've been pretty good. They've been good additions for the Jets. And just considering that was the big question mark going into the season, they addressed that and they still aren't a solid playoff team. It really mystifies me because I think the way they're built, it's a good team. And so in terms of what the Jets should do at the deadline and whether they make a push for the playoffs, in my mind, say they sneak in as the second wild card, you're going up against the Colorado Avalanche, who are the best team in the league. Do you seriously think this team, who's fumbled their way into the second wildcard spot, have a chance against this Colorado team who's unbelievably stacked? In my opinion, you don't really have a chance. And so for that reason, I think the Jets have to be sellers at the deadline. I think they have to trade Andrew Kopp. I think they have to trade Paul Stastny, among potentially others. They have to make a couple more tweaks in the offseason and hope the next season goes better. Because for me, if you're going in as that second wild card, you've got no hope. I mean, maybe if they could push for second or third in the division and they'd have to play, say, Minnesota or Nashville instead, I'd say, yeah, you have a chance of winning that series or going further in the playoffs. But just the way the season's gone so far, I don't have a lot of confidence that adding to this team or keeping a guy like Andrew Kopp, who you can recoup assets with, and potentially losing him in the summer, I'm not really sure that that's the correct way of going about it.
I mean, both guys are unrestricted or UFAs at the end of this year, and we know Andrew Kopp only signed a one-year deal, and Paul Stastny is on the end of his contract looking for probably, I don't know, retirement, maybe one more kick at the can, who knows. But, I mean, I agree. It's one of those things that it's a 50-50 spot, and all season we've expected to see so much better out of the Jets. We just haven't seen it consistently. And I think you're never going to – if everyone thought that you were going to replace a Byfuglien with a Schmidt and a Dillon, no, you're not going to replace a guy like Dustin Byfuglien. But at the same time, you spread your assets out on 2 separate pairings, and you've done a really good job with it. I agree that, you know, if you expected this to be a quick flip over and say these guys are going to fit it and do amazingly well right off the hop, it just hasn't turned out that way. I mean, that decor, I think, is a lot more solid, a lot more veteran-esque this year compared to previous years. And I think that's the case when you don't see other players like Sandberg and Ville making the lineup day in and day out. They traded Sam Unica, who was obviously a problem child in their organization, but was a guy that, was a AHL top defenseman only a couple of years ago. Hasn't played very well, probably won't play very well in the NHL. But I expected to see better efforts and better outcomes win-loss wise from these Jets. And we can come up with more excuses after Monday. Let's see if they become that seller or that buyer. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. Last but not least, let's quickly touch on what's going to happen in Edmonton. I mean, Calgary's made a couple of moves already. The Battle of Alberta is doing extremely well. The big difference is Markstrom versus a question mark in the Oilers' goal. What are the Oilers going to do?
I think you're right in saying the big difference is Markstrom and net. And I was really thinking when that contract was signed by the Flames that the Oilers really missed out, and that could be the difference of the Battle of Alberta in a couple of years. And it kind of seems like that's the case. And they're in a very similar position as Toronto, as in there's not a ton of attractive goaltenders on the market. There's Marc-Andre Fleury for sure, but he's got a full no movement clause, and he doesn't have to go to Edmonton if he doesn't want to. And so if you're not acquiring Fleury, I'm not really sure who else is out there. And I think this is all on Edmonton Oilers management in coming into the season with Koskinen and Smith again. I mean, just considering how the last 2-3 years have gone with that duo, I just can't find a single reason why management would go into the season with that same combination. So for me, I'm not really sure they're going to make a move in that. I think it's a similar situation to Toronto in that they have to ride their guys, hope someone gets hot, and hope that they're carried by their offense, because this team really is built around those two guys. And after that, there is a lot of holes.
Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, they're the three Canadian teams that probably will not make or do not make the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Vancouver's an interesting one too for the trade deadline, because they've had some big guys with their names out there, whether it's JT Miller or Brock Besser. But JT Miller's playing so well that it would be almost impossible to trade him no matter what you're getting back. And Brock Besser's still so young with so much potential. I mean, there is a lot of question marks in Vancouver. There was a lot of high hopes going to the season, almost a little bit similar to the Jets in terms of, I think that the Jets are a more balanced and well-built roster top to bottom, but the Canucks had the same expectations and they failed to meet them. And they're kind of stuck in this muddy middle where do they really want to sell and give up on the season? But at the same time, it's not really a team that's worth buying for either.
Quickly before I let you go, I know we're coming up to trade deadline, about 18 so games, 20 games in the season after the trade deadline. Who are your favorites today before deadline? And then if they make the moves, who are your dark horses to get in?
Okay, so my favorite pretty much all season has been Carolina. I've really liked the Hurricanes top to bottom. Their defense is incredibly solid. It seems like they're getting good goaltending in Freddie Anderson, and they've got a ton of depth and just adding young guys year after year, whether it's Svechnikov 1 year, then Marty Nichas, and then this year Seth Jarvis has come in and put together a great rookie season. So from the East, I'm really looking for Carolina to make the push for the Cup. In the West, Colorado's the favorite by everyone, but it's not always the favorite that wins. And for me, I'm really keeping an eye on the St. Louis Blues. I think this is a veteran team who won a cup a couple of years ago, have kind of fallen out of the spotlight a bit, but they added a bunch of good young players. Pavel Buchnevich from the Rangers, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, the fastest skater in the NHL, according to the skills competition. So I think they have a great mix of those veterans in O'Reilly and Perron, Parayko, and then you've got those young guys coming up as well. So for me, I think St. Louis is a bit of a dark horse, but at the same time, I think they're built to have success in the playoffs.
I like the call with Carolina. If Carolina doesn't get in, do you see Tampa Bay three-peating?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I think every cup you win, it's just harder and harder to get another. I couldn't even tell you when the last three-peat was. It was definitely before my era. But I
think it was the Oilers back in the 80s.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So it's possible, but at the same time, there's so many competitive teams who are in that same cluster that I think Tampa Bay is not far and ahead better than any of those 8 playoff teams in the East. And I mean, if you have a 1 in 8 chance of even getting to the Cup Finals, which is kind of the way I see it in the East, it's just so unlikely that they could get a three-peat.
I think it's going to be a fun last quarter of the season to watch, as I have a lot of hopes for some teams to get in, but a lot of hopes are weighing on the fact that I got a St. Patty's beer waiting for me in about 45 minutes. So we'll see what happens with that. Anthony Jacob from NHL.discussion. Keep them in your like side when it comes to the Instagram. Follow them. They are always up to date. Great hits, suspensions, all that jazz. As a Leafs fan, I'm surprised you're taking Carolina with Anderson in the pipes. Hopefully, what's his face, Mr. Matthews, learns how to cross-check below the shoulders from now on. I think that's something that has to happen. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin's a 6'4", 6'5" defenseman. How do you get up that high? You just ride him high. That's what you do, right?
Yeah.
They said it was retaliation. You got what was coming for him, so maybe that's okay. But Austin Matthews, I mean, he's such a terrible penalty guy. I mean, 86 minutes in his 4-year career. That's definitely one of those repeat offenders. I agree. Wouldn't you say, Anthony?
I think the biggest thing about that, though, is that Matthews has a race to 60 goals right now, and I think those 2 games he missed might prevent him from getting to 60 goals. So that would be a bit unfortunate.
I think it'll be a catalyst. Watch this kid get fired up again. I think him and Mitch Marner will start doing some magic, and they're gonna start doing some crazy good things. I think in Toronto. I just wish they could find a goldtender. But I don't cheer for the Leafs. If the Jets are out, I'm not cheering for anybody in the West. It's got to be. I'd like to see Toronto because I feel bad for Toronto fans. I really do. When you think about it, besides Montreal's run last year, unexpected, the Winnipeg Jets have been the most successful Canadian team in the last 4 years, playoff-wise, haven't they?
Yeah.
As much as we say how badly they are this year, like, you really think about it, they've been the most successful team in the playoffs and being Canadian, which is not a bad thing for Winnipeg Jets fans. So think about that. Think of the other side of the coin. The cup is half full somehow.
Well, I was thinking Vancouver, but I realized that was 2010, 12 years ago. So
yeah,
and they didn't even win. So definitely.
Yeah, you could thank the infamous Boston Bruins for that one, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, I want to thank you very much for your time. Good luck in your studies. Good luck in your playoffs. I know you're taking on the Railers from T-Cones, and good luck playing upset dog.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate having me on again.
Always, anytime. We'll try to get you on. We'll see what happens for playoffs. How about that, Anthony?
For sure. Sounds good.
Right on. That was my friend Anthony Jacob. Make sure you follow them on Instagram at nhl.discussion. As always, for the latest and greatest, especially upcoming up till Monday. There's going to have some amazing deals. And we forgot to ask Anthony, but maybe we'll see on his post whether or not he picks how many plus or minus trades on Monday. I'll give him a little example of what kind of post to put up. Thanks to watching, bringing more goodness to greatness here on ASTV on the ice Tuesdays and Thursday nights. Check us out on all our social media pages as well. We're on Roku TV as well as Apple TV. Just search ASTV Productions. Click on your favorite show, and we'll be happy to share all of our information, all of our wonderful discussions with you at your pleasure and your time that works best for you. This week, we've also got some swim meets, some Manitoba, Saskatchewan provincial swim meets happening at the Pan Am. So make sure you're checking out, watching those up until the end of the weekend. This is Theo Tutkaluk saying good night. Have a great weekend. Make sure your basements don't fill up with water. And, of course, have a great rest of the evening. And take care of your friends. Take care of your neighbors. Bye-bye for now. Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.